Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Skyrim's Strongest Stories. I am Select77, and today we shall be reading Queen. Where is it? The Queen Volume 1. I think this is actually the first book in the series where I'm reading the first book of all the books. And where I found this was right here at Broken Fang Cave. When you pick this up, you get a +1 addition to the Lockpick skill. This is especially good for a thief. So, let's get to reading. As always, I do not know how long this book is. The Wolf Queen, Book 1, by Wogbin Jarth. From the pen of the 1st century 3rd era sage Montukai. I don't know what that date means. 3E63. In the autumn tide of the year, Prince Pelagus, the son of Prince Uriel, who was son of the Empress Kintaria, who was niece of the great Emperor Tiber Septim, came to the High Rock City state of Camerlorn to pay court to the daughter of King Volstead. Her name was Quintilla, the most brutacious princess in Tamriel, skilled at all the maidenly skills and an accomplished sorceress. 11 years a widower with a young son named Antithcus. Pelagus arrived at court to find that the city-state was being terrorized by a great demon werewolf. Instead of wooing, Pelagus and Quintilla together went out to save the kingdom. With his sword and her sorcery, the beast was slain, and the powers of mysticism, Quintilla chained the beast's soul to a gem. Pelagus had the gem made into a ring and married her, but it was said that the soul of the wolf stayed with the couple until the birth of the first child. 3E80. Excuse me a second, let me take a drink. The ambassador from Solitude has arrived, Your Majesty, whispered the steward Balvus. Right in the middle of dinner? Muttered the Emperor weakly. Tell him to wait. No, father. It's important that you see him, said Pelagus, rising. You can't make him wait and then give him bad news. It's undiplomatic. Don't go then. You're much better at diplomacy than I am. We should have all the family here, Emperor Uriel II added, suddenly aware of how few people were present at the dinner table. Where's your mother? Sleeping with the archpriest of Kirineth, Pelagus would have said, but he was, as his father said, diplomatic. Instead he said, at prayer. And your brother and sister? Amiel is in the first hold meeting with Archmaster of the Mages Guild, and Galena, though we won't be telling his to the ambassador, of course, is preparing for her wedding to the Duke of Narcissus. Since the ambassador expects her to be marrying his patron, the King of Solitude, instead, we'll tell him that she's at the spa, having a cluster of pestilent boils removed. Tell him that, and he won't press too hard for the marriage. Politically expectant though it may be, Pelagus smiled, you know how queasy Noors are about warty women. But dash it, I feel like I should have some family around, so I don't look like some old fool despised by his nearest and dearest, growled the Emperor, correctly suspecting this to be the case. What about your wife? Where is she and the grandchildren? Quintilla's in the nursery with Sepphoris and Magnus. This is way too many weird names. Anticus is probably whoring around the city. I don't know where Paltima is, probably at her studies. I thought you didn't like children around. I do during meetings with the ambassadors in damp staterooms, sighed the Emperor. They lend an air of, I don't know, innocence and civility. Showing the blasted ambassador in, he said to Balvus. Potimo's bored. There's a rainy season in the Imperial Province wintertide, and the streets and the gardens of the city were all flooded. She could not remember a time when it was not raining. Had it only been days, or had it been weeks or months since the sun shone? There is no judging a time any more in the constant flickering torchlight of the palace. and that Potamo walked through the marble and stone hallways, listening to the pelting of the rain, she could think nothing but that she was bored. Oh, Astipe, I just gotta be worried about it. Astipe Hertuda would be looking at her now. Ordinarily, she did not mind studying. Remote memorization came to her easily. She quizzed herself as she walked down the empty ballroom. When did Orsinium fall? 1E 980. Who wrote the Tamrillian tractates? Cozy. When was Tiber Septium born? 2E 288. Who is the current king of Daggerfell? Mortian, son of Gothlia. Who is the current Sylvana? Varbarinth, son of Varbaril. Who is the warlord of Zomoth, of Lomoth? Trick question. It's a lady. Loa. What will I get if I'm a good girl and don't get into any trouble? My tutor says I'm an excellent student. My mother and father will renege on the promise to buy me a Daedric katana of my own, saying that they never remember that promise, and it's too far expensive and dangerous for a girl my age. There were voices climbing from the Emperor's stateroom. Her father, her grandfather, and a man with a strange accent. A Nord. Potama moved a stone and she had loosened behind a tapestry and listened in. Let us be frank, your Imperial Majesty, came the Nord's voice. My sire, the King of Solitude, doesn't care if Princess Galena looked like an orc. He wants an alliance with the Imperial family, and you agreed to give him Galena or give back the millions of gold he gave to you to quell the Khajiit rebellion in Torvel. This was the agreement you swore to honor. I remember no such agreement, came her father's voice. Can you, my liege? There was a mumbling noise that Potama took to her grandfather, the ancient emperor. Perhaps we should take a walk to the Hall of Records. My mind may be going. The Nord's voice sounded sarcastic. I distinctly remember your sealing being placed on the agreement before it was locked away. Of course, I may have been very mistaken. We shall send a page to the hall to get the document you referred to, replied her father's voice, with the cruel, soothing quality he used whenever he was about to break a promise. Potama knew it well. She replaced the loose stone and hurried out of the ballroom. She knew how slowly the pages walked. Used to running errands for a doddering emperor, she could make it to the Hall of Records in no time at all. The massive ebony door was locked, of course, but she knew what to do. A year ago she caught her mother's bossamer maid pilfering some jewelry. In exchange for her silence, forced the young woman to teach her how to pick locks. Potama pulled 2 pins off a red diamond brooch and slid the first into the first lock, holding her head steady and mesmerizing the pattern of tumblers and grooves within the mechanism. Each lock had a geography of its own. The lock to the kitchen's larder, 6 free tumblers, a frozen 7th, and a counter bolt. She had broken into that just for fun, but if she had been a poisoner, the whole imperial household would be dead by now, she thought, smiling. The lock to her brother's Antikos secret stash of Khajiit pornography. Holy shit. Just 2 free tumblers and a pathetic poison quill trap easily dismantled with pressure on the counterweight. That had been a profitable score. It was strange that Antikos, who seemed to have no shame, proved so easy to blackmail. She was, after all, only 12, and the differences between the Persevisions of the Cat People and the Persevians of the Cyrodiils seemed pretty academic. Still, Antikos had to give her the diamond brooch, which she treasured. She had never been caught, not when she broke into the Archmage's study and stole his oldest spellbook, not when she broke into the guest room of the King of Gillane and stole his crown the morning before Magnus's official welcoming ceremony. It had become too easy to torment her family with these little crimes, but there was a document the Emperor wanted. For a very important meeting, she would get it first. But this she was the hardest lock she had ever opened. Over and over she massaged the tumblers, gently pushing aside the forked clamp that snatched at her pins. Drumming the counterweights, it nearly took her half a minute to break through the door of the Hall of Records, where the Elder Scrolls were housed. Excuse me. The documents were well organized by year, province, and kingdom, and it took Potama only a short while to find the promise of marriage between Earthiel Septim II, by the grace of the gods, Emperor of the Holy Cyrodiilic Emperor of Timero, and his daughter the Princess Galliana, and His Majesty King Monteriaco of Solitude. She grabbed a prize and was out the hall with the door, well locked before the page was even in sight. Back in the ballroom, she loosened the stone and listened eagerly to the conversation within. For a few minutes, the three men, the Nord, the Emperor, and her father, just spoke to the weather and some boring diplomatic details. Then there was the sound of footsteps and a young voice, the page. Your Majesty, I searched the hall and records and cannot find the document you asked for. There, you see, came Potama's father's voice. I told you it didn't exist. But I saw it, the Nord's voice was furious. I was there when my liege and the Emperor signed it. I was there! I hope you aren't doubting the word of my father, the sovereign Emperor of all Tamriel. When not, there's now proof that you must have been mistaken. Pelagius's voice is low, dangerous. Of course not, said the Nord, conceding quickly. But what will I tell my king? He's to have no connection with the imperial family, and no gold returned to him as the agreement, as he and I believe the agreement to be. We don't want we don't want any bad feelings between the Kingdom of Solitude and us, came the Emperor's voice, rather feeble but clear enough. What if we offered King Menticuro as a granddaughter instead? Potama felt the chill of her Rome descend on her. The Princess Potama? Is she not too young? Asked the Nord. She is 13 years old, said her father. That's old enough to wed. She would an ideal mate for your king, said the Emperor. She is, admittedly, from what I see her, very shy and innocent, but I am certain she would quickly grasp the ways of court. She is, after all, a septim. I think she would be an excellent queen of solitude, not too exciting, but not noble. Not too exciting, but noble. The granddaughter of the Emperor is not as close as his daughter, said the Nord, rather miserably. But I don't see how we can refuse the offer. I will send word to my king. You have our leave, said the Emperor, and Potama heard the sound of the Nord leaving the stateroom. Tears streamed down Potama's eyes. She knew who the King of Solitude was from her studies. Mantai Ruko, 62 years old and quite fat. And she knew how far Solitude was and how cold in the northernmost clime. Her father and grandfather were abandoning her to the barbaric Nords. The voices in the room continued talking. Well acted, my boy. Now make sure you burn that document, said her father. My prince, asked the page's querulous voice. The agreement between the Emperor and the King of Solitude, you fool. We don't want its existence known. My prince, I told the truth. I couldn't find the document in the Hall of Records. It seems to be missing. By Lorcan, roared her father. Why is everything in this palace always misplaced? Go back to the hall and keep searching until you find it. Potama looked at the document, millions of gold pieces promised to the Kingdom of Solitude in the event of Princess Galena not marrying the king. She could bring it to her father, and perhaps as a reward, he would not marry her to Monticro. Or perhaps not. She could blackmail her father and emperor with it, and make a tidy sum of money. Or she could produce it when she became Queen of Solitude to fill her coffers, and buy anything she wanted, more than a Daedric katana, that was for certain. So many possibilities, Potama thought, and she found herself not bored anymore. Damn, what a spoiled bitch. These books are either really long or short. I like that. What I don't like is a bunch of random names I'm having a hard time pronouncing. And it's making me sit back and think about how to pronounce them and stumble over it. But that is how the game is played, with a bunch of names from their own era. So there's nothing I can do about that. But I hope you enjoyed the Wolf Queen and I will see you next time for another Skyrim's Strongest Stories. Wait for the next book.